Science 23. Consider the following procedures performed in experiment 2 for sample 2. Number 1, the sample was frozen. Number 2, the sample was incubated in the water bath. Or 3, the sample and solvent mixture was filtered. These procedures were performed in what order? So we're going to go back and look at experiment 2, specifically sample 2, to see what was the correct procedure and put it in the right order. So I'm going to come over here to experiment 2. Experiment 1 was repeated, except that in step 3, the filtered liquid was analyzed to determine the lycopene concentration. Okay, so even though it directed us to experiment 2, we were actually going to go to experiment 1 because they said everything was repeated there, except that last step, they looked for the lycopene instead of the vitamin C concentrate, because, yeah, vitamin C. So let's start over in experiment 1. And see if we can find the order. Remember, we're looking for sample 2. So starting up here, 2 kilograms of a particular variety of raw tomatoes were sliced and then blended in a food processor until a homogeneous or a uniform tomato mixture was produced. The mixture was divided into 4 equal samples, samples 1 through 4. Each sample was placed in a separate bag, and the bags were sealed. The bag containing sample 1 was immediately frozen. Now, we might think, oh, something was immediately frozen, but we're not looking for sample 1. So we know that that's not going to be our first step. We're looking for sample 2. So starting right here, the bags containing samples 2 through 4 were each incubated in a water bath. That was step number 1 for them from the options that we have. So incubated in water bath was the first step for our sample 2. All right, and then let's see what happened. It said for a different period of time, and then frozen. Okay, that's what happened next. And we could probably take those 2 steps and find our answer. So first we're saying sample 2 is incubated in a water bath and then frozen. So coming back over here, which one of those came first? We're saying that this one, the sample was incubated in the water bath, was the very first procedure. And that only applies to C and D. Do you see that? And then we're saying that the second thing was that the sample was frozen, was 1. So we have 2 and then 1. So it looks like the answer for 23 is C. But let's keep going and see just the last part of it after it was frozen. And then we can come down here and it says then 2 days later, steps 1 through 3 were performed. And in this one, the sample was thawed and then it was placed in a beaker. So we know after that it was thawed. And then what came next? It was filtered. That's what that step is telling us. And then it was analyzed. That was the step. And then the only change between experiment 2 and 3 is that right here, instead of in experiment 2 is the lycopene. And then down here, it was the vitamin C concentration. So they were testing 2 different nutrients. So these were the steps that we determined: incubated, frozen, thawed, filtered, and then analyzed. And this was all specific to sample 2. All right, does that check out? Over here, we're saying that first the sample was incubated, and then it was frozen, and then later on it was filtered. So we're looking for 2, 1, 3. Yep, so the answer for 23 is C.